You're listening to the Elevate Your Call to Service podcast. Here you'll gain tools to lead proactively, conquer overwhelm, and revitalize your law enforcement teams and your agency.
We're your hosts, Michael and Kathy McIntosh. Mike is a retired sheriff and current division chief in the Denver metro area with nearly 40 years of law enforcement experience.
Kathy is a business and branding expert and a longtime law enforcement wife with a unique perspective on the human side of law enforcement.
Together, we share a powerful blend of practical experience and insightful roadmaps to help you elevate your call to service.
Well, welcome back. This is our 40th episode, and we're really excited to have a special guest in our podcast room. And I want to kind of set up a little bit about who this guest is. This is somebody who has been incredibly influential in my life in a lot of different areas. But as we talk about a leadership podcast, probably one of the most inspirational leaders that I've tried to model and mold myself after. One of those mentors that in leadership that has just really kind of paved the way for me. And it's my dad, John McIntosh. He just called a couple of days ago, said he was coming to Colorado. We were getting ready to do our podcast, and we were actually talking last night and starting to get into some leadership concepts. We've talked about a little bit of leadership today, but who would you say was your most influential leader as a kid, or somebody growing up, a leader that you looked up to when you were younger?
Boy, that's a great question, Mike. As you know, I experienced lots of difficulties growing up.
Yeah.
My parents divorced, and that was a very traumatic experience for me. And so I sort of wandered, not sure about my future. And I'll say this, going back to the beginning, growing up fairly wealthy, country club and all of that, I always told myself I wanted something bigger. So I grew up with that idea, and it was sort of instilled in me by my parents. They thought I was, pretty incredible, I guess. They bragged about me all the time. But after their divorce, life was very difficult. And we went from, having a lot of money to almost no money. I was influenced by my friends, and I left home when I was 16 for good, gone. How did I make it? I think one of the most influential people I had as a teacher was Mr. Brown. Because at that time, when you were 16 and you're married because you got your girlfriend pregnant, teachers actually looked down on you, but not Mr. Brown. So I had him for U.S. history, and I remember it was a huge change in my life because he motivated me because he cared about me. And that's really what propelled me. His belief in me and his support for me.
Now, is this in high school?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And then when you graduated from high school and were looking at where it is that you want to go and what it is that you wanted to do, what was that guiding light for you? What kind of kept you going in the direction that you needed to stay going, to stay motivated, to be able to do and to accomplish the things that you've been able to accomplish over the years?
Wow. Well, I hit a roadblock. After I graduated high school, I enrolled in Shasta College, and thinking I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get a degree, not quite sure what I was going to do, but I thought then about being a teacher because Mr. Brown. However, my wife said, you can't go to college because you're going to fall in love with a college girl and that'll be the end of our relationship. So at the end of the semester, that was it. I was done going to college.
And then you got into, from a profession standpoint, what did you start doing?
Well, I was really fortunate that I had, in high school, I had to work because I had to, support my family. So I went to work at a wholesale plant that purveyor of lunch meats, hams, smoked meats, as well as, beef and everything from beef cattle. So I was on the cleanup crew, but then on Saturdays, I learned how to, make and smoke hams in the smokehouse. I learned how to make sausage. I learned how to make hamburger. And making sausage is not just making sausage, but making sausage links by the hour and tying them, boxing them up in 10-pound boxes. So I did that for the second half of my junior year, the entirety of my senior year. And your grandfather, Jess, had a connection with farmers, which is a grocery chain. And he got me into an apprenticeship program at one of their stores in Redding, California. So I started my 2-year apprenticeship as a meat cutter.
So I was born at this point. So you're trying to provide for a wife and a young child.
And we also had Sherry. Yeah.
And then you stayed in that profession for quite a few years. You and Mom went through your divorce, and you then decided that you were going to pursue your dream.
Right.
Tell me about how that happened.
Well, I remarried, and I had a wife that really encouraged me to go back to school. She was a teacher, and I thought, that's what I want to do. So, that was the goal. And I'm going to college, not to party. I'm going to college to make straight A's and do the very best I can. I worked pretty much full time all the way through college. I went to class every day, but it was very difficult for me. And I graduated, and then I started, at that time, it was a 1-year student teaching program. And I went back to Enterprise High School and did my student teaching in Enterprise High School, where I graduated.
Which was a pretty cool experience, I would imagine, being able to go back to the high school where you had attended and graduated. Now you're back there as a teacher.
It was really cool.
At some point in your teaching career or in your educational career, you started to get into leadership. What was it about that kind of took you out of the classroom and put you in a role where now you're starting to lead people?
Well, the transition really started when I was, my first job was teaching in the middle school. And the principal relied on me fairly heavily to sort of manage the school, because the principal is also the superintendent. It was a small school district. And at one point, and I believe it was my 3rd year in there, he made me part-time assistant principal and part-time teacher. So that's what I did. I had an opportunity after 5 years to teach high school. So I started teaching high school and immediately became a student activities director, which is it's a quasi-administrator. I'm still a teacher. I don't need an administrative license in California to do that. I did that for, 5 years? And we got a new principal, and she said, John, you need to be one of my assistant principals. And I was like gung-ho, sure. It's like, because one of the assistant principals we had, he always gave me great evaluations, but he also was an ineffective leader. He was an ineffective assistant principal. And I knew I didn't want to be like that. I wanted to be somebody that really supported teaching and learning. So, I stepped into that role, and it was, a lot of work, lots of hours, even more than teaching. I loved teaching and being a student activities director, but this was like, it was different. It was challenging. And I'll tell you, at that time is when the gang thing hit high schools. This was in very early 90s, about 1990. So when we had teachers that would send kids to the office, we go through their binders, and often there would be like all these gang drawings. So we met with the Reading Police Department downtown. And this was a Shashun High School district. So we had 3 comprehensive high schools and 2 continuation high schools. So we would meet with a corporal that was in charge of the gang task force in Reading, and we shared information. And it really helped us. And law enforcement, put the skids as best we could on the growing gang problem. We had drive-by shootings and murders in Reading. We had gangs coming up from Sacramento. It was a scary time for kids. A real scary time for kids.
You talked a little bit about this ineffective leader. And obviously, there's times that you just can see that, right? But when you talk about the other side of that, what are the characteristics that you have to be an effective leader, or what is displayed? What characteristics are displayed when you see an effective leader?
Well, first, I think you have to believe in the organization. You have to believe in the mission of the organization. You have to know that you're going to do all you can to support the mission of the organization. And in my case, it's education. So to me, that meant for this assistant principal, he's really a nice guy, slap your back and all that and give you good evaluations. And I was a good teacher, but it was like there was no accountability for student behavior. So that impacted the entire climate and culture of our high school.
Right.
So you're talking about an organization. In leadership, you need an individual that deeply cares about the organization, the mission of the organization, and you need to care about the people in it, including the kids in this case.
The kids are really kind of the community that are coming into your organization. They're there for, depending upon what school you're in. They could be there for 4 years. They could be there for, if it's an elementary type of school, they're there for much longer. In middle school, even a little bit shorter. But really, those kids are the reason why you're there.
Right.
And that's the reason why the school exists. And when I look at organizations and I look at the leadership in organizations, so many times we find ineffective leaders in sometimes, unfortunately, very influential leader positions. And the culture that creates, and it's not a good culture, and it's really not a culture that other people are really going to want to stay for very long, in that they're always going to be looking for something that's a that's a much better fit, right? A culture that they want to be a part of. So that ineffective leader is really crippling to an organization if they don't care about the organization, if they don't care about the employees in that organization, and if they don't care about the reason why they're there. Mm-hmm. And in this case, it's the kids. In law enforcement, it's our community, right? Mm-hmm. It's so critical to the things that we do as a leader. We talked a little bit this morning about a situation that had come up when my son was talking to you about a situation that he had encountered where there was a ineffective leader, and how that kind of just grates against the grain for you, how that grates against the grain for me when leaders are in positions and they treat their employees so incredibly poorly. They forget the reason why they're there. And one of the things that we discussed is, when you get into a leadership position, it's no longer about you, but it's about those that you have the influence over, those that you have the opportunity to lead. It's really about the employees. It's not about the leader and the individual that's in that role. I know that over the years, you rose to the level of superintendents and you were running school districts as a superintendent, and you had to do a lot of, and I'm just going to call them candidate searches or employee recruiting, especially the leaders within the organization. How did you know, what were you looking for when you would go through those interview processes with those candidates so that you knew that you were making the right hire?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I need to go back just a little bit, and it'll help frame my answer. So when I was first hired as a superintendent in a school district in the Bay Area, I inherited what I inherited in terms of personnel. All the teachers, classified employees, administrators, the whole deal, right? The curriculum, all of it. So stepping into that role, it was very important for me not to sit in my office. I needed to be out in every school, every day, observing teaching and learning and employee performance, whatever it might be. If it's the custodial staff, the teaching staff, the administrative staff, whatever it might be, I need to make a connection with every part of that organization. And I need to learn who they are. We hired this new principal at one of our middle schools, and she invited me to come. You want to come and join us for our first staff in service? I said, sure. So I participated with the employees, the teachers, and played games with them and answered questions, some of them personal, about who I am as a person and what my goals are. So it's building, for me, it's like building a foundation of demonstrating to your all of your employees that you care about them as people. And I'm talking, it's like nobody's below anybody.
Right.
Custodial staff, maintenance staff, they're just a part of the organization as the teachers, as the administrators, because you all are there to support teaching and learning. So that's where I took it. I had some unfortunate decisions to make because when I took the helm, there were some really ineffective administrators. And how did I know? Well, so it took me time, spending time in the schools, observing, talking with teachers. I did what was called a traveling cafe. And the traveling cafe was myself and one of the assistant superintendents. We went to every single school in our district, and with that, we brought, coffee, drinks, and this was like on a staff in-service day, and we got input from them. We listened to them. We listed things on the board in terms of what's good and what do we need to improve on. So I'll tell you, that was huge because people really started believing, hey, this superintendent cares.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, the people in the district office really care about us and about what's going on in our schools and what's important. So talk about building trust. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I had some administrators that I had to let go. It was difficult, but I talked with them, and one guy was very angry, an assistant principal. One of the principals totally understood. So those are the calls you have to make.
When you look at your career as a superintendent and then what you did after that, after you retired, you kept getting called back because of the value that you provided in these roles. What do you think was biggest traits that you had that people would gravitate to and want to have you in those roles for them? I mean, just that, that connection that you would have with your boards, the connection that you would have with those that were on your team. What do you think that it is?
Well, I think to begin with, I was totally transparent, totally supportive. So let's start with the board, because the board hires the superintendent. With my board, we went through the California School Boards Association, CSBA, called it Masters in Governance. So we went through all of these different about facilities, about leadership, about budget, and in other words, all the roles that the board have, because they're the ones, the board collectively, they set the direction of the district. And then it's the responsibility of the superintendent to make it happen and to report to the board as you go through the school year, your progress, including your evaluation as a superintendent. I mean, that is a square deal. That's the way you do it. You don't evaluate a superintendent on the superintendent's personality and how they like him or don't like him, but it really is a good deal to be liked by your board. So you have opportunities to go to conferences together, to go to these trainings together, and you interface frequently. So you have an opportunity to actually build friendships, and there's a trust there. So they believe in you, and you believe in them, and they're going to make the right decision. So that's how it is with the board. And as I said earlier, the same thing with administrators, the same thing with teachers, same thing with classified employees, visiting schools, praising your employees for a job well done. It's that positive recognition, be it, hey, great job, thanks so much for doing that. Whatever you can do to really lift them up and know they're appreciated.
Yeah, I think that's so, it's so key. And I think that a lot of that goes to really the ability to communicate. And you're an outstanding communicator, and people really struggle with that. And it's one of those things that sometimes is really difficult to quantifiable. What kind of tips would you share about how you communicate to emerging leaders out there and how important that is?
Well, I'm trying to think of some examples. I get paid to coach superintendents. So one of the superintendents I coach had this junior high assistant principal, and he made an inappropriate comment to one of the teachers. And he calls me and he tells me what's going on. He said, I got to move him and I don't have a place to put him. So he's probably going to have to go back to the classroom. And from that, this guy learned, don't step over the line and things you say to your colleagues. So that's just like one example of how things work where I am. I have superintendents that call me all the time, or people that are thinking about becoming a superintendent. So we talk and, I give them as much encouragement and information as I can.
When I think about brand or leadership reputation, I think that could certainly be an example of you're moving in the right direction when it comes to your leadership brand. And along the way, something happens and maybe you taint that leadership brand a little bit. I think that it's important to be able to repair broken trust. And when things like that happen, what comes to your mind when it comes to trying to repair some broken trust that's out there for some of these leaders that are cruising along, they're doing a good job, they break trust somewhere, and we know that doesn't have to be the end of the game. But there's some work that needs to be done. What do you recommend in those situations?
Well, what I recommend is having a frank conversation with the employee. And I mean, if the individual is really serious about, maintaining and excelling in leadership, and wanting to serve at that level, then they understand, yeah, I blew it. I need to change. That was my bad. And I'm going to learn from this and move on. If they make excuses, that's it. I'm done with them.
Yeah.
Own up to it.
Right.
Own up to your mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. People that don't make mistakes don't do anything, right? So own up to mistakes that you make and move on. And most importantly, learn from it.
Yeah. I think that's a critical piece to it. Is I've always told folks that this doesn't have to be something that ends your career, but your actions going forward from here, how you handle that, how you handle adversity, that really starts to tell me a lot about that person. And it goes right back to, are we going to excuse our way through this, or are we going to own it, apologize, and start making steps, real steps to move in the right direction, from there. I would say over the years, one of the things that has been important to us is that strength in family. That's one of our core values. How did you find ways to balance your professional and your personal lives as a leader going through your time of full-time employment with the school districts?
Well, I guess the most important or most accurate answer is I had a spouse that understood what it took for me to get the job done. Very supportive. Whatever you need to do to get the job done. She's just amazing. Just so understanding. And likewise, I share the same philosophy with her and what she does and what she needs to do.
Yeah. All of us, I think, have inside of us how we're built and how it is that we feel like we need to be able to get to do the job and to do it correctly. When I look at you and I look at me and I look at my son and I think about the way that we approach things is if we're going to do something, we want to do it the best that we can do it, right? We want to put everything into it that we have. And I think we're all, the three of us are very fortunate that we have spouses that support us in that because it's so important. Because you really can't do that without having that support. If you can't leave the house and know that you have the support at home that you need to have to be able to go out and be the best that you can be when you are in whatever role you are in, it makes it difficult. And so it is important to find that balance. But I also find that there's times that can be taken advantage of, or we can take that for granted. And I'm talking about the McIntosh men can do that. And it's also nice that we have that will come around us and say, hey, you're taking advantage of that, in a nice way, and sure, have those conversations. One of the things in our profession, and I know it's the same in the profession that you walk through, was wellness is critically important. And when you're leading people, or when you're around people all the time, and in our professions, that is certainly the case. There's a lot that plays into that in keeping ourselves well. How would you say that you were able to protect your own wellness throughout your career?
Well, I guess for me, when I was teaching, running was an avocation, and I had time to run. Yeah, but it wasn't easy. I went out the door every morning at 5 a.m. and I was back by 6:30. I ran 9 miles. I was back by 6:30 in the shower and ready to go to work by about 6:45. So in that case, I took care of it by just being out when nobody was awake. So I wasn't missed. As time went on, it was difficult because there was athletic supervision. There was all kinds of stuff going on. And it wasn't just us. It was the principal was right there with us, right?
There's definitely different seasons, especially when you have kids at home that you're just trying to take care of. Sometimes you kind of have to put a ceiling on what you're able to do until the kids are older, and then maybe you can start to raise that ceiling a little bit. And it's for folks that get into the education profession, for folks that get into the law enforcement profession, and there's a lot of professions out there, but their careers that you kind of stay in, maybe not with the same organization, but with the same profession for many, many years. And I think that sometimes we lose sight of that, and we think that we have to go to the top as fast as we can go. And I see that a lot with some of the younger generations wanting to be in those supervisor roles much faster. On one hand, it's good to see that they have that drive and that passion and to want to be there and want to attain that. But at what cost from a personal level is that going to create for them? And at the end of the day, when you get to the point in your career where you're at and where I'm at, and towards the end of my career, it's are those same people that you started your career with, those loved ones, your family, were they a casualty of your profession, or are they with you, at the end? And we have to make sure that we're constantly keeping that in the forefront.
Right. Mindful of your family and their needs.
Yeah. I think that's really important that we do that. We usually try to close our podcast with a challenge for our listeners, for those that tune in and share the podcast with us. Is there one piece of practical advice that you can give us that would apply to a leader in any profession that can make their leadership journey stronger?
Well, for me is always recognizing your employees. Not just teachers. It's your classified employees. Everybody in the organization, because they all count. They all matter. So thinking outside of, where you are, and thinking about the employees in the organization and where they may be and what would be nice to lift them up.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to elaborate a little bit. So I started, this is through a Jostens program, and Jostens, some of your listeners may know, they do Letterman's jackets. They do award for school awards. There's Hirsch Jones and there's Jostens. And they had this, they call it the Renaissance program. So under the Renaissance program, you're rewarding kids for academic excellence. You're also rewarding them for school attendance, and you're rewarding them for good behavior. So we would have these assemblies, and we would give and you have to have donors in the community that give, so you can give to kids, because it's not coming out of the school budget. And it was incredible. I mean, we would give all these awards, cash awards, different kinds of awards to kids, and they were like flabbergasted. We call them up in the assembly, and they come up and they receive this award, and really it was the recognition. It was the recognition.
Right.
So the recognition for students, the recognition for staff, and not just teachers. It's all of your staff, because you're all there doing the best you can for kids.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I when I think about the organizations that I've had the opportunity to be in, there's folks that do a lot of work and don't get a lot of recognition. And I would say especially in law enforcement, because the uniform and the badge, they're the public facing, right? And people recognize them for being in law enforcement. But when you start to talk about the staff that's working in records, or the staff that's working in dispatch, or the staff that's working in IT and keeping things going, and how easily they're forgotten because they're not the ones that are, out there in the community on the front line, seeing the community. I'm very fortunate to work in a community that's very grateful for law enforcement, and it's not uncommon when I'm in uniform that people come up and thank me. I was walking in a parade yesterday, and continually people would thank you for your service. Those other staff members who are incredibly important to our organization, they're not recognized that way because they're not wearing the immediately identifiable, badge or uniform. And so they don't get that. And it's so important for us, especially leaders in those organizations, that we not forget that, that we make sure that we thank them for the incredible job that they do. Because as you know, those support folks, there's no way we do our jobs, and no way we do our jobs at a high level without having that support staff that's there. So, and that's a great reminder to all of our listeners, whatever role you're in, there's somebody that is supporting you and your function, and make sure that you don't forget them.
Right.
That you ensure that you appreciate them for the work that they're doing. Well, we could probably sit here and talk all night, but
well, I want to say one more thing.
Please do.
So easy. It's so easy. It takes a little time. I don't care if you're in classified management, certificated management, law enforcement, wherever you are in the organization, sit down take 5 minutes and write an appreciation note to 5 people on your staff. Thanks for doing a great job. I saw you, Thanks so much. Put it in an envelope wherever they receive mail in the organization.
Right.
Yeah,
I love that.
It's magic.
Yeah.
And people love getting that. It's like, oh, wow, somebody cares. Yeah.
Yeah, and it goes back to somebody noticed or somebody actually listened. And I love that story that you told, when you took over that superintendent job, that you would show up in some of those staff meetings, and that you would solicit information, and not only solicit information, talk about it, which meant that you were hearing what it is that they were telling you.
And then as a follow-up, what we did is we sent that whole thing back to the school. This is what we learned. We hear you.
Yeah. That stuff is powerful. Yeah. And that's what builds that trust. And with that trust, that's what creates these great teams. So, well, thanks for spending some time in the podcast room, and we loved having you here.
I love being here.
Ready to build a stronger team, improve your reputation, strengthen officer safety, and recruit top talent? Visit us at leleaders.com and schedule a call with us today. We'd love to discuss how our coaching programs, workshops, and keynote addresses can help you build proactive leaders in a reactive profession.
In the meantime, if you like what you've heard today, we'd love your 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.